Hi, welcome to my video on solving inequalities with fractions. There's two methods for solving inequalities with fractions. One is the normal method, and the other method is multiplying both sides by the LCD. Let's do an example of each. We have to move, when we're solving inequalities as with equations, we have to move the x's to the left and the numbers to the right. So half x negative 2/3 x less than 3 minus 1. So the 2/3 x moves to the left to become negative, plus 1 moves to the right to become negative, because I move all my variables, all my x's on the left and all my numbers on the right. So when we're adding terms which have fractions, we need a common denominator. A common denominator for 2 and 3 is 6. So I'll multiply a half by 3/3, and I multiply 2/3 by 2/2. That gives me 3/6x, subtract 4/6x, less than 2. I have a common denominator, so I keep the denominator of 6, and 3 minus 4 is -1, x less than 2. Now, because I have a fraction, I can either divide by 1/6, or I can multiply by the reciprocal, which is reciprocal of -1/6 is -6. So I multiply both sides by -6. Notice when you -6 times -1/6 gives you 6/6, which is 1. Or 6 cancels into 6 once, and negative times negative positive, so you get a 1. So that gives you -12. So that's the normal way. Also, just to show you why I multiplied by the reciprocal instead of dividing, I could have taken a -1/6 and divided both sides by the -1/6. They cancel out to give me x, but then I have a little bit of work to do here. So 2 divided by 1/6 is 2 times -6/1, which is -12. So dividing by -1/6 here, you have to do more math, which is nothing wrong with doing the math. It helps us strengthen it. But notice, because you're dividing, you're multiplying by -6. So right from the start, why don't you, because you have a fraction here, multiply both sides by -6, and it makes it easier. Another way to solve equation or inequalities with fractions is to multiply both sides by the LCD. The LCD for 2 and 3 is 6. So if I multiply the left side by 6, multiply the right side by 6, let's see what happens. The 6 is distributed in through, so 6 times 1/2 x plus 6 times 1. So this 6 is multiplied by both terms on the inside. And this 6 is multiplied by both terms on the inside. So what we're doing, multiplying both sides by 6, keeps the inequality balanced, as you do with the equation, keeping it balanced. So what I do, I multiply each term by 6. So what happens then? All the fractions will disappear by canceling. All the denominators will cancel into the denominator. So 2 divides into 6 3 times. 3 times 1 is 3, so you get a 3x. 6 times 1 is 6, less than. 3 into 6 goes 2. 2 times 2 is 4x. And 3 times 6 is 18. So let's move the variables to the left, which we normally do. Numbers to the right, which we normally do. Change into signs. That gives us -1x, or -x is less than 12. And now that's understood to be a -1. So I'll divide both sides by negative 1. So x is greater than negative 12. Oh, see a mistake? Notice up here, when I multiplied by negative 6, I forgot to change the direction. Now, what a mistake to make. When you multiply or divide an inequality by a negative number, the direction of the inequality changes. So multiplying by negative 6, this less than becomes a greater than. So, my mistakes. We do make mistakes, so just be careful. Just be careful. And I found that out here when I divided by a negative number, the less than became a greater than. So here's some more examples. I'm going to do these down here now, doing them both ways, and then you can make a choice. So here we go. Notice this one and this one are the same. So I'm going to do this one by normal, this one by multiplying by the LCD, just to practice. So the 2/5 x as a negative becomes a positive when you move it to the left side, and as a negative becomes a positive when you move it to the right side. They have common denominators, so I add. I get a 3 over 5x is greater than 3. Now, the reciprocal of 3 over 5 is 5 over 3. So I multiply both sides by 5 over 3. That's a 15 over 15, so they all cancel out. So that gives me a 1x. And 3 into 3 goes once, and 1 times 5 is 5. So x is greater than 5. And I'm not multiplying by a negative number, so I do not have to change my inequality around. So if we do the other method, and this is multiplying by the LCD, I'll multiply both sides. The LCD is 5, so I'll multiply both sides by 5. There we go. So that's 5 times 2/5 x, and 5 times 3. And it's already done there, so it's only one term, so I'll leave it. So 5 is multiplied by both of these, done. That means in this you should have no fractions when you finish this step, because the denominators will cancel out. So 5 into 5 goes once. 1 times 2 is 2x. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. 5 into 5 goes once, so I get a negative 1x, or negative x. And we move the x's to the left and the numbers to the right. Add. Notice there's a 1 there, so 2 plus 1 is 3, greater than 15. Divide by 3, and x is greater than 5. So you get the same answer either method, but in the end, which way you want to work these, that's your choice. B, I have the same one here twice, so I'll work this one out the normal way and multiply them by the LCD. So negative 5 over 8x, that's a negative a half, becomes a plus a half, less than equal to 1/4 minus. So notice the negative becomes a positive, the positive becomes a negative, because the x's go on the left, numbers go on the right. Now I need a common denominator, so 5 over 8. Common denominator for 8 and 2 is 8. So I multiply 4 by 1. So 1/2 is multiplied by 4 over 4 to give you 4 over 8. And common denominator for 4 and 2 is 4, so 1/4. So you multiply by 2 over 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Common denominator is 8. And negative 5 and add on 4 is negative 1/8, less than. And common denominator is 4. And 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And now I'm down to the last step. I need to make a 1 here, so that reciprocal of a negative 1/8 is negative 8. So I multiply both sides by negative 8. So negative 8 times negative 1 over 8 is 1, because the 8 cancels, and I get a negative 1 times negative 1, which is 1. And 4 into 8 goes 2, so negative 1 times negative 2 is 2. And again, be careful. What happens? Because I multiplied by a negative number, the less than becomes a greater than. Don't forget to change it around. Because I'm talking and I'm trying to explain, I have a tendency sometimes to forget the little tiny step. And multiplying by the LCD, common denominator for 8, 2, 2, and 4. You have to get the LCD for all fractions in this inequality. So the LCD is not for, notice here the LCD was 8, and on this side the LCD was 4. But when you're doing this method, you have to get the LCD for all fractions. And the LCD for 8, 2, and 4 is 8. So I multiply both sides by 8. So that's 8 times 5/8 x. 8 times a half less than equal to 8 times the negative a half x plus 8 times 1/4. And every denominator should cancel once, so it's a negative 5x. 2 into 8 goes 4. 4 times 1 is 4. 2 into 8 goes 4, and that's a negative 4x, because 4 times negative 1. And 4 into 8 goes 2. 2 times 1 is 2, so all fractions are gone. And now we move the x's to the left. We move the numbers to the right. The negative 4 becomes a plus 4, and the plus 4 becomes negative. That gives us a negative 1x, negative 2. I'm dividing by negative 1. Remember, that's a 1 there. And when I divide, that get x is greater than 2. Greater than. And I drop the equal sign as I was coming down through it. Again, I'm talking and not being too careful. Got to be careful of what we're doing. So the two answers are the same, no matter which method you picked it. Let's continue. Now, I'm going to pick the best method for me, and the best method I like is to multiply. If I have an equation or an inequality with fractions, I like to multiply by the LCD. Here we go. The LCD for 3, 3, 3, and 6 is 6. So 6 times both sides. So here we go. So 6 times negative 2/3 x and 6 times 2/3 less than 6 times negative 1/3 x and 6 times 5/6. Now, when you get good at this, really, I put the 6 in front of this one and in front here. But if you want, you could avoid this 6 and go right to this step and multiply every part of this inequality by 6 here. So you don't have to do this, but this is making sure that you're multiplying both sides and you're distributing the 6 through. Every denominator should now cancel if you got it done right. 3 into 6 goes 2, negative 4x. 3 into 6 goes 2, plus 4, less than. 3 into 6 goes 2, negative 2x. 6 into 6 goes once. 1 times 5 is 5. Negative 4x. X is moving over to become plus, and the 4 is moving over to become a minus. X is on the left, change the sign. Numbers on the right, change the sign. Negative 2x is less than 1. We're dividing both sides by negative 2. X, negative divided by a negative, is a positive 1. And because we divided by a negative, we change the sign, and we get a negative a half. I prefer, when I work equations, when I get used to it, to multiply by the LCD. But you can only do that with an equation. If you have an expression, remember, if you have an expression like 1/2 x plus 1, and this is not an equation, you can't multiply this expression by 2 because it's only when an equation where you have both sides, left and right, that you can balance it by multiplying through both sides, but not 1/2 plus x by itself. But if you had 1/2 plus x, add on x, now you have equation. Now you can multiply both sides by 2. But you can only do that with an equation or an inequality where you multiply both sides, not with an expression. You got to have an equation or an inequality. Number 2, we have, first rule I obey is that I multiply, I remove the brackets. It makes it a little bit easier if you remove the brackets. So negative 1/4 times 3 is a negative 3/4 x. Negative times a negative is a positive, and 1/4 times 9 is 9/4. Remember, 1/4 times 9, the 9 is over 1, so that gives me 1 times 9 is 9, 4 times 1 is 4. Notice the 4 cannot cancel into the 9 evenly or without a remainder. And 3 times a negative 1/2 is negative 3/2x. 3 times 1/4 is 3/4. And just to make sure, 3 times negative 1/2, the 3 is over 1, so when you multiply, you get a negative 3/2. The 3 is over 1, so the 3 is multiplied by negative 1, the 1 is multiplied by the 2. So when you multiply a whole number by a fraction, then the whole number goes with the numerator because it's understood to be over 1. Now we have the brackets removed, so now the LCD for this one is 4, 4, 2, 4. So the LCD is 4. So we multiply both sides by 4. So it's 4 times negative 3/4 x. 4 times 9/4 greater than 4 times negative 2/3 x. 4 times 3/4. I like to do this step right here because I see my cancellation and I hope it don't make an error. So 4 into 4 goes once. So 1 times negative 3x, negative 3x. 4 cancels into 4 once. 1 times 9 is 9. Greater than 2 into 4 goes 2. 2 times negative 3x is negative 6x. 4 into 4 goes once, so I get 3. And negative 3x plus 6x greater than 3 minus 9. The negative 6x moves to the left to become plus. The plus 9 moves to the right to become minus 9. Add. I get 3x is greater than negative 6. And dividing both sides by 3. The 3's cancel and I get a 1. And I get a negative 2 when I divide. And notice this is a 3, so I do not have to change the inequality. Notice when you multiply both sides by the LCD, when you get down to this last step, you have no fraction. So it's easy to just divide both sides by 3. And there's no brackets, so I can multiply both sides by the LCD. The LCD for 5, 2, 2, 10. The LCD for this set of fractions is a 10. 2 and 5 are factors of 10, so I multiply both sides by 10. That's easy. Just take your time, multiply both sides by 10. So 10 times negative 1/5 x minus 10 times half x minus 10 times a half. Notice when I multiply by 10, I put the minus with the 10 and leave it out of inside of here. Greater than or equal to 10 times negative 2/3 x plus 10 times 3/2. Every term in the inequality is multiplied by 10, so cancellation, you can see the cancellation. If you left the 10 here and multiplied in your head, then you had to be careful. Because 5 into 10 goes 2, multiplying in 10, 2 into 10 goes 5, and you got to be careful. But when you write it down like this, you see the cancellation occurring. 2 into 10 goes 5, negative 5 times 1. 2 into 10 goes 5, negative 5 times 1. 2 into 10 goes 5, you get a negative 15x. 2 into 10 goes 5. Oop. I just noticed, again, I make those errors. Says I'm not careful. So wonder I passed my math because I put a 3/10 here and that's the 10 there. So 10 and the 10 goes 1, so that's a negative 3. And that's a 15. Sorry about that. I have a tendency to make errors. Now I simplify both sides. I'm adding these x's because they're like terms. And remember, if you simplify the left and the right side first, you get less to transpose. Negative 7x is plus 3x greater than or equal to 15 plus 5. The negative 3x becomes a plus. Negative 5 becomes a plus. Add, I get a negative 4x is greater than or equal to 20. Divide both sides by negative 4. And x, negative 4 divided by negative 4 of 1. I divide it by a negative number, so we change the inequality, and that gives me a negative 5. Okay, and the last page is page 404. And this is we've ran into this not a problem, we ran into this situation before where you have two fractions. Remember, you can, if you remember, A over B and C over D. If you have two fractions equal, you can go A times D equals B times C. You cross multiply. So we can do that here. So what I'm going to do is write this down right here. And because I have two choices, because I have two fractions equal, I can cross multiply. So 4 times 2x minus 1 is less than or equal to 3 times x plus 2. I'm cross multiplying as I did here. 4 times 2x minus 1 equals 3 times that. That gives me 8x minus 4 is less than or equal to 3x plus 6. The 4 is multiplied by 2x and minus 1. 3 is multiplied by the x and the 3. And the x's move to the left. And the numbers move to the right, changing your signs. Negative 5x is less than or equal to 10. And we divide by negative 5 on both sides. And that gives us x. And because I divided by a negative number, I change it to greater than, and I get a negative 2. Solved. But if you forgot, because your two fractions equal, and cross multiply, like here, you could say the LCD is 3 and 4, the LCD is 12. So you can multiply both sides by 12, which is also an option. Because I'm multiplying both sides by 12, 3 into 12 goes 4. So you end up with 4 times 2x minus 1, the same as I have right here. And I cancel. 4 into 12 goes 3, and I get 3 times x plus 2. So multiplying both sides by 12 and canceling out your denominator will give you the same step as right here. So if I continue, I get 8x minus 4 is less than or equal to 3x plus 6. So this step right here is identical to this one. So either cross multiply with two fractions equal, or multiply both sides by 12, LCD. Either way, you'll get to the same answer. And that brings us to the end of the video, solving inequalities with fractions. I hope you excuse a few errors that I make. I always make errors. As I said, I'll never get 100%, or I rarely get 100% on quizzes because I make what I call the silly error, mental error. If you like my video, click on the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, especially if you're a subscriber, because I'm doing extra videos, more videos all the time. Write a comment on my video if you wish, and visit my math website at www.mathfullyexplained.com, and there you'll find information on me, my videos, and the content that's going to be on my YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.